Welcome to episode 10 of Kent's Garage. I've spent the last week finishing up a shock absorber replacement on my E320 Coupe, and guess what? I learned a few new tricks. In fact, I had to learn a few new tricks because the job on the floor was a little difficult for me, probably because of my age. Okay, so I've shot a separate video, and I'm going to call it Shock Absorber Replacement Tips for Old Guys. I'll put that up on YouTube in the next few days. I think you'll get a kick out of it, and you may learn a few tips of your own, particularly if you're doing this job on the floor in your own garage. And I did that for the purposes of shooting the training videos. I did a complete step-by-step video between the front and rear shock. It's over an hour long, and I go through all the procedures of how to do this easily and safely and what type of tools you're going to need to do that. So that's available on my website as an on-demand video. They'll be up in a week or so, and then those videos will also be available free when you purchase the shock absorbers from Mercedessource.com. So I'm getting ready to roll this thing out. After I show you that tips and tricks for old guys video, I'm going to come back and just show you a couple things about lubrication on this car before I roll it out the shop and bring the next car in. I just completed replacing the front shocks and the top rubber mounts in this E320. I decided to do it on the ground. You know I have a lift, but I wanted to demonstrate to my customers how you could do this in your own garage with the car up on jack stands and with a floor jack and so on. Well, it kind of wore me out. I forgot. At my age, when you have to bend over all the time, and then you have to tackle some of the bolts, particularly the ones on the bottom of this front shock on these models, you need a lot of torque, and my shoulder hurts. But for you older guys, for you senior citizens out there wanting to do this type of work on your own car, I want to share with you just a few tools that I used that really made this job go a lot easier for me. Now, I've done this job a lot over the years, but at this age now, it's like, things are starting to, change. I don't have quite the arm strength or the shoulder strength. And of course, I definitely don't like kneeling on cement floors. So the first thing is this kneeling creeper. If you've watched some of my other videos, I introduced this in one of my Kent's Garage series. This is wonderful. I wouldn't even want to do a shock job or any front suspension again without having this kneeling creeper. I can just roll around, go over here, get, pump my jack up, come back, get to the bolts. So this kneeling creeper really helped. My knees don't hurt at all after finishing this. The other tool is this ratchet wrench that extends and collapses. I know if any of you have done this job, you've got limited space in there, but you also need a breaker bar. And once you get the nuts or the bolts broken down there, you then either shorten this up or you need a short ratchet, so you're changing tools. But what was nice about this tool, 1/2-inch drive, is I could just extend it right out, break those bolts loose, and then push it back in and then rapidly get them off. So this was another one. And then the lights. I've talked about LED shop lights and how much they've improved, but this one is absolutely wonderful. When you put this on the ground, particularly working on the back side of this front hub here, I can light this area up on the back side and get to those bolts. You really need good light. I've known people to take off the wrong bolts on the back side because they're reaching back there trying to feel which bolt to remove. And it is possible to remove the wrong bolt. So you need to kind of see what you're doing, and nothing beats these new LED shop lights that are now available on the market. This is a snap-on, and I really like this one because it has the low feet, so you can set it on the ground and tilt it up and down. You can see right here how I can even get it over on this side and really light up the area where I'm working. And then finally, for me, putting wheels back on a car, you have to have this mounting pin. That's an absolute must. Okay, I know if you're real young, you work out at the gym every week, who cares? Just whip the wheel on. But this is so nice to be able to roll the wheel over here and just kind of put it up on this mounting pin and then put the lug bolts in and torque them down. So I just wanted to share those little tips with you. if you're trying to find easier ways to work on your own car in your own garage. Now I'm going to go ahead and tackle the rear shocks next. I've done a complete detailed step-by-step video which will be available on my website. It will also come as free instructions when you purchase the shocks on my website. So be sure and check that out. We'll find out later if I come up with any new tips when I do the rear shocks next. You know, I'm just finishing replacing the rear shocks on this E320 Coupe. It never ceases to amaze me. The rear shocks. Why should it be so difficult? Now, I don't mean in terms of mental stimulation. It's not rocket science. But it always seems so difficult in terms of physical exertion. And when you get older, it's even tougher. I mean, how many of you tried to compress that rear shock down, you know, just get it down enough so you can get it in the hole? And by the time you're done, you're going, well, when you're over 65 like me, you know, approaching 70, you don't have all that much strength anymore, okay? So I am always looking for ways to use less exertion, to create better ways to work on these cars without extra pain. That's why I'm on this kneeling creeper here. Look at that. See, I got nice padded knee pads and I can just roll around here and work on my car to my heart's content. But I tell you, I learned a few things doing this job. I learned a new little trick. I finally said, I got to find a way to get those shocks out and back in a lot easier without getting my heart rate up so high. So I just finished filming a complete step-by-step video. This will be available on my website. We'll include it with a shock purchase from Mercedessource.com. But, you know, for those of you who've been struggling, I found some new tips, some new tricks, and I'm going to show you all those things on this video, including all the tools you're going to need. And don't think you can go under there with just 2 or 3 tools and get the job done quickly and safely, okay? Now, just in closing, I want to share a little tip. It's actually a recommendation. It's a stern warning, because this is something you definitely want to do anytime you're putting your wheels back on. All right, I got my trusty wheel alignment pin in the top. That's usually where I position it when I mount a wheel. I put it right up at the top. And I'm going to roll right in here on my kneeling creeper. Let's see. Okay, come on, baby. Okay, look at that. Wow. Now I can take a break. See, I don't have to hold it while starting a lug bolt. And I'm going to move the tire a little bit. Get this one started. If I was showing you this with an air wrench, it'd be a lot faster. Once again, I can't cheat. I don't know how many of you have impact wrenches with big compressors out there. All right. So all I'm going to do with this speed wrench is just make sure all 5 of these lug bolts are tight. I'm not going to try to torque it in the air. We'll do that when I get back down. But I am going to pull the jack stand out now. And set that aside. And what I would recommend is anytime you're working on wheels, don't say, well, I'll go back and torque the bolts later. I've seen too many times where that's been forgotten. So as soon as you finish putting a wheel on, don't do anything else until you torque the wheels. That means get the car on the ground and come back, and we're going to torque those bolts to about 78 to 80 foot-pounds. Then we're going to go back in the trunk and finish up the job. You know, I bet the hood hinges in this E320 have never been lubricated, and the car is 21 years old. I can see down in here just how dry they are. Fortunately, these hinges on the W124 chassis are up and away from the water drain areas. One of the problems with the W123 chassis is the hood hinge is way down low here, and it can actually get wet. In that case, you've got real problems. I've seen those hinges just freeze up and rip right out of the inner fender well. Now, there's a number of different lubricants you can use to lubricate these. You want something that wicks well, that'll seep into these tight joints, and you want something that'll hold up to water or moisture. I do not recommend WD-40. If you say why, I'm working on a video to demonstrate just how poor a lubricant WD-40 is. But I like to use automatic transmission fluid. It has some really unique properties. One of them is that it holds up very well to moisture, and it has great wicking capability. And if you've seen any of my other videos, you know I like these curved tip syringes for applying different types of lubricant. Nothing works as well as this when you're trying to get right down in these little areas around the hinge. And I'm just going to put 2 or 3 drops there. And then I'm going to come down on this lower one. I may let this soak in a little bit. Now, if there's washers, you want to get the lubricant on both sides of the washer. And then you've got a little pin there. All right, let's put another coat on there. This is something you should probably do about every 6 months. You definitely don't want these hood hinges seizing up on you. On a W126 chassis, one of these pins seized up and it busted the pin right out. And it was a big job to fix the problem. So a little bit of lubricant can save you some big headaches down the road. Now, I usually have a rag handy so I can inject this lubricant and then wipe off any excess. You might want to come back in a little bit and double check if it's dripping down the side of the fender or inside the engine compartment. You just wipe off the excess. Okay, now I'm going to go over on the other side, lubricate that hinge, and then we'll talk about lubricating the front latch assembly. For most of these latch assemblies, you're going to need a good spray lubricant to get down inside. Some of them, like the W123 chassis, it's open. You can get to it from the bottom side, but these have a plastic cover over that assembly where the cable hooks up to this pivot point. I prefer Croil oil. This is my oil of choice when it comes to spraying latch assemblies. You really can't get into them any other way than with a spray lubricant. This is the same thing I'll use on the door latch assemblies to keep them from seizing up. Later on, I'm going to show you 2 or 3 cars I have around here that you can't even get the doors open because nobody lubricated the latches. So I'll take the Croil oil, I'm going to spray down in here. You don't need to flood it, but we'll get the pivot points. Just let this soak for a little bit. Once again, you can see I've got a little bit of excess there. I'm going to spray a little down in this hole. We'll just let that kind of drain away, and then I come back with a shop towel and clean that up. And then finally, I'm going to lubricate the catch right there. You want a lubricant that'll stay on for a while because every time you close and open the hood, you know, it's rubbing. And the lubricant I prefer for this is synthetic grease. And I'm going to just wipe this synthetic grease in here on both sides of the lever and on the tip of that latch. Okay. So now, I might even put a little over here because it tends to rub on the back side as well. That's the alignment hole when it comes down and closes. So let's go ahead and put a little bit of synthetic right around this pin. This is what helps pop the hood up when you release the latch. Okay, so the hood is done. There's a lot of other things I need to do to this engine. I'm not finished with my 2,000-hour inspection, but I want to go ahead and roll it out. I'm going to do some more test driving with it. Then we'll get it back in and on the lift, and I'll talk about a lot of other things I'm going to check over on this car. One of the reasons I like these sawed-off paintbrushes, and I'm going to call them sawed-off because you do have to cut them down so you get a stiffer bristle, is you can get into all these cracks and crevices when washing a car and detailing it without scratching the paint. Watch how I get into this crack on this handle right above the license plate. Now if you use a plastic brush here, you would end up scratching the clear coat. But with these sawed-off paintbrushes, they become the ideal scrubber in really tight, confined areas. Look at how much junk is coming out from that crack in that trunk handle. Then using the pump sprayer, you can quickly wash it off to see if you've cleaned it well enough, and then come right back in with a brush and scrub it some more. This process works very well inside the trunk and doors, along the seals, and in all the grooves to get all the crud out that's collected over the years. And what's really nice about using the pump sprayer is you can get in this area and rinse this without getting water all inside the trunk or inside the car. Okay, I'm ready to introduce you to coupe number 3. I know some of you have already guessed what this car is, and I'm sure some of you are looking at the shape under this car cover and you think, ah, yeah, I know what that car is. But what I want to do is take you back when I first saw this car in the garage of the seller. I walked in the garage, it wasn't that well lit, and he had a car cover on it, just like this. And I remember standing there as he went up and slowly, I think he was trying to do this for effect, but he reached back and he slowly started to pull the car cover up like this. And he's just pulling it up, and the first thing I noticed is, look at the condition of those taillights, look at the rubber, look at the chrome. And then I'm looking like, oh wow, look at that original paint, and look at the bumper trim, oh my word. And he just keeps, even the antenna rubber is not cracked. There's no chips. And look at the rear seal. And the anodized aluminum isn't all faded. And he just keeps rolling the tarp back. And as I move forward, I'm going, oh my, is this ever a very, very special 560 SEC? Okay, I know some of you are saying, come on, Kent, get this car out so we can see it. Hey, it's raining out here in the Pacific Northwest. Probably will be raining for another 2 weeks, so it may be in January before you get to see this car in the light. But I just want to open the door here. Look at this interior. It's absolutely gorgeous. This is that rich navy blue leather. And guess what over there? You look at that. Burl wood doesn't even have any cracks in the finish. You can see I'm really excited about this coupe. Just wait until I get you in the other seat and we'll take you out on a ride along. So now you can see what I meant when I say that things usually happen in threes.